Well, welcome everyone to the AlixPartners ninth Annual Private Equity Leadership Survey webinar. I'm Ted Balilis, Global Head of our Transformative Leadership Practice at AlixPartners. We're very proud to have started this survey almost a decade ago, tapping into insights from many of the most successful investors and operators in the private equity community. It's become an annual tradition to review our findings with experts from the private equity world, and today we have two very special guests to speak with. But first, I'd like to introduce my colleague and partner, Jason McDaniel. Jason, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Ted. Great to see everyone. Thank you for joining us. And I'm Jason McDaniel. I co-lead the Americas Private Equity Practice at AlixPartners and worked with Ted to put the survey together. I'm very excited to have this discussion today.
Great. Thanks so much, Jason. And now on to our special guest. Joelle Marquis is the president and senior partner of Arsenal Capital Partners. She's also the chair of the firm's management committee, which is responsible for the firm's overall leadership and management decisions and actions. Jimmy Holleran is a partner at American Industrial Partners, focused on the human capital strategy across the firm's entire portfolio. So let's get started. We recently published the results of our ninth annual Private Equity Leadership Survey, and we surveyed over 200 executives, private equity executives, and portfolio company CXOs on the role of talent and leadership, specifically in value creation. Talent is consistently cited as a key value creator. The good news is that the private equity Portco relationship is generally good. Respondents were asked to select 3 attributes to describe their relationships. The majority of the respondents selected positive attributes, specifically being collaborative, hands-on, and trust-based. Respondents were also asked about the areas of misalignment between investors and Portco C-suites. Both groups agreed on misalignment regarding financial performance and achieving targets within a specific timeline. But private equity respondents cited the quality of the leadership team as an area of misalignment. And Portco execs cited misalignment on goals and incentives. So, to our panel, trust and alignment are critical components of building a productive relationship between the board and management. We've seen the data move around a bit, especially with COVID, and our latest findings from this report are really interesting to unpack. Specifically, after acquisition and as a hold period unfolds, what can be done systemically to ensure that the relationships build upon themselves most productively? Jimmy, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, thanks, Ted. What's the old Head and Shoulders tagline? You don't get a second chance to make a first impression, right? It's well documented that management teams kind of need to be on their best behavior, putting their first foot forward at the beginning of a whole period. But the same is true the other way around, right? And one of the things that I think stronger private equity firms do really well is very purposefully have touch points and checkpoints to build the trust. And an area where I think it manifests is every firm's going to have their going into a new acquisition is going to have their list of things they need to do, the value creation plan. We call it an operating agenda at American Industrial Partners. There's typically a person or two who's accountable to different elements of that plan, but the CEO and the board is accountable for the whole thing. And it's important that is processed together. It can't feel like something is handed from the PE firm to the management team and expected just to carry it out. There has to be, we often have our management teams kind of build back up the operating agenda from the ground up. So it really becomes their plan. Another thing I'll do very, very purposefully, or will do, and I'll support, is we'll have a 2 day strategic offsite. This is once there's a little bit of meat on the bone with that operating agenda. Management's had an opportunity to play with it. And we're taking that list of initiatives and we're translating it into action. So we're doing two things in those 2 days. We are building trust with one another, and maybe later in the conversation I might get into some of the details of that. But we're helping form a team. And two, we're starting to say, okay, over the next 6 months, we have 7 initiatives we're trying to get done over a hold period. But what's most important on a 6-month time horizon? And we call that our rally cry. And then the kind of team can get to work on that rally cry, knowing they have the support of the firm to focus on whatever it is that's most important in those 6 months. And that's part of the kind of episodic process by which a value creation plan or an operating agenda goes from kind of deal thesis to execution in a way that feels partnership led, as opposed to it being kind of brought down on high by the firm.
I love that. And I hope we can talk more about that 2 day offsite and that whole notion of the rallying cry. That's terrific. It sounds very collaborative.
In fact, Jimmy, let me just say that's great, because what we often see is portco companies undergoing a lot of change. The success rates go up dramatically when you really invest the time in getting that upfront alignment on guiding principles, the key ways you want to move forward, getting leadership to sign off on what's possible. Certainly they'll be anxious. Certainly they're not quite clear on how to get from point A to point B, right? And so as much as you can facilitate that pathway, where they can see how they can navigate that path from A to B, that goes a huge way to, and I like this idea of the first 6 months victory, because that you get some quick wins, you get momentum, you get confidence with the leadership team. They start to feel good about it. So really, that's great that you shared that.
Yeah.
Joelle, your thoughts on trust and collaboration?
Yeah, I love the rally cry. But I think, as the survey said, trust and alignment are critical components. If we're going to build productive relationships between boards and management teams, it's also critical if we're going to have any healthy relationships, frankly, whether they're in business or personal. And I'd really posit that having a clear set of core values that the firm believes in, and that they bring to life and demonstrate, not just in words but in actions, is vital to the PE portco relationship. It can't be something that's just lip service or something that's posted on the wall. At Arsenal, our core or cornerstone value is genuine partnership, and I'd say that that of course includes things like that are must-haves like trust and respect, but it goes further. Genuine partnership requires teamwork, it requires collaboration, really leveraging our best talents, and I would also add servant leadership to that. I think that holds us to a high standard of accountability, both personally and collectively as a team. And I believe we don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our culture and our values. So I think that's really at the core of the relationship, a healthy relationship. And we share our core values with our CEOs. We share them with our management teams. We invite them to have genuine partnership and be in genuine partnership with us, but also ask them to hold us accountable for behaving accordingly.
That's great. How do you move from, Joelle and Jimmy, how do you move from words to action in that? I mean, being upfront about, values, collaboration, even something as profound as servant leadership. How do you demonstrate that? Do you ever get any resistance from your management teams around, hey, wait a minute, maybe there's some conflict here, or what do you mean by that? Like, how do you make it real?
Yeah, I would say it's in how we represent ourselves and how we engage with people, right? So are we the kind of people that folks want to follow? right? Because people are going to follow us. They may follow us because they need to, they have to. But are they just enduring following us, or are they choosing to and enjoying following us? So are we people they're striving to work with, want to work with? Are we unlocking their potential? I think it's how we engage with them. It's respecting them really as peers on this mission to create as much value as possible. I could go on and on
Yeah.
about that one, but
Yeah. Well, and I want to emphasize what you said around, I mean, I love the comment on core values. I want to kind of double click on what you said around servant leadership, because that's a principle of the whole firm, specifically of the operating team, because oftentimes there will be an operating partner who's, at least for a period of time, this is somewhat unique to AIP, but others have a similar model that's embedded, and their job is to kind of be an extension of the management team to reach back into AIP with resources for resource from the operating group and help those resources accelerate whatever the plan is. But it's so important that that individual is attuned to how the CEO is feeling, the partnership is evolving, making sure they're reading tea leaves in terms of where there might be misalignment, making sure they're having kind of conversations in the right order if that needs to happen, because it's very easy for trust to get eroded early on, and it's very hard when trust gets eroded early on to rebuild it. So antennas need to be up early on as you're representing yourselves and ourselves in the firm in the first 60 90 days, because really good, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. When that goes well, it perpetuates. When it doesn't go well, it becomes an issue, and it's hard to backtrack.
and
Yeah.
I would just add that I think that applies all the way through the deal team.
Yeah.
A lot of times our senior folks are cued into that, but we need to be cognizant of it and continue to train and mentor the junior members of our deal teams as well. They're representing, the firm today, but they're also representing the future of the firm.
At AlixPartners, our team's been asked both to kind of set up and facilitate what you described, Jimmy, as that first meeting after close kind of thing, but then periodically, maybe annually, kind of doing a kind of light touch feedback, check-in between management team and sponsor. Where are the points of alignment? Where are the points of misalignment? Kind of giving the opportunity for both groups to make some course correction so it doesn't go too widely afield. Do either of you, have someone or some mechanism by which you can collect feedback, or you're getting honest feedback in both directions, or is it more you huddle amongst yourselves and tell stories about what the day-to-day, week-to-week is like with your management teams?
I would make two comments on that in terms of our approach. I would say we make a priority to kind of show up. So I'd say informally that's happening constantly, though sometimes if it's only informally, conversations that need to happen can build up and there's no real time so we are starting to have at least one formal checkpoint a year between what we would call the governance lead, or the chair of the board, the person at AIP that is caretaking the investment at a senior level, and the CEO. And there's kind of time in that kind of more formal discussion to talk about the partnership and make course corrections and cascade that to the rest of the management team and the AIP team that's supporting that investment. And I think those conversations are really, it's easy to kind of come up with a reason not to have them, but they're really important to have.
Jason, I'm sorry, go ahead, Joelle.
No, I was just going to add that, so we do performance reviews. We include 360s as part of those. We get feedback from our CEOs, from our C-suite every year. So that's, the feedback is really, really important. And, pausing long enough to self-reflect a few times a year on how we're doing. It's also part of our portfolio company reviews to have the deal teams share with us how their own scorecard and the scorecard from the CEOs.
Great. I'm curious, Jason, you lead our large private equity practice. I'm wondering, what are you seeing as either best practices or not so good practices on
Yeah.
this whole topic of alignment and communication?
Oh, a great question, Ted. And Joelle and Jimmy, really like your points because we work with over 300 private equity firms worldwide, and we see this wide range of, I'll call it, rules of interaction between PEs and portcos. I think you both represent what I would consider best practice, which is where and as I mentioned, this succeeds, where you really build a partnership with the folks on the ground. They're going through transformation, they're going through change. Many of them face anxiety with investors getting involved. Certainly when we show up, they have anxiety sometimes when they have advisors getting involved. So building that partnership and trust is critical. One thing I've seen, to answer Ted's question, is sometimes when things go wrong, and I'm curious about your thoughts on that. So, according to the survey, and this sort of is what I felt as well, is there are some points of misalignment at times between PE and portcos. A few that come to mind would be in terms of the leadership quality, their lack of urgency, lack of adaptability, unfocused execution. Those are three things that came up in the survey as key themes. My question, and I see that a lot, I've seen this where some PE firms get frustrated with the leadership team in place may not be quite equipped to take this to that level. My question to you is, I wonder how much of this could be attributed to the interesting and disruptive environment that we're in right now. You've had macroeconomic variables changing, cost of capital going up, rules of the game changing, certainly in certain industry verticals. What are you seeing? Do you see some of those disconnects happening, and how have you navigated some of those challenges?
Well, if I could just build
Yeah.
a little bit on Jason's question to both you, Joelle, and Jimmy, going back to the data, we found that about half private equity leaders that we surveyed said that there was a lack of urgency and unfocused execution, kind of what you mentioned, as the causes of poor performance in the portco. However, the portco executives, not only decisively reject this, but they think the biggest cause is that investors lack the operational expertise and business acumen, really. Joelle, well, how are you seeing this at Arsenal, for example?
Yeah, look, I think there's tremendous reality in both views. But as people in private equity know, the clock here ticks faster than in the corporate world. And if we're able to make gains early on, then they have outsized positive impact at realization. And so the way to get those gains is, to me, with a clear strategy and laser focused execution. So I think those comments are right on. Since our inception, Arsenal's had really quite a strong focus on operating partners. And they are folks who have been multi-time CEOs. They have been in the seat of their portco counterparts. And having a deal team that's led by one of our operating partners who have operational expertise and the strong business acumen that's mentioned in the survey, I think really helps to speed up the time to build trust and credibility with the portfolio companies. And for our firm, this means having operating partners who are co-leads on deals. They're right alongside the investment partners, their peers. Their peers in decision-making rights, their peers in the firm's hierarchy, and their peers in their compensation structure. And operating partners are really a capability that we bet on 24 years ago. And I think that it gets at the heart of the point that the CEOs in the survey were making. And so to me, there's not a wrong answer here. I think it's a combination of views that really do paint a clear picture of the reality.
I love what you said, though, that the operating partners are even comped appropriately to the investment partners. They're equal partners. Now, I have certainly seen, Jason, you probably have too, lots of situations where that is not the case. And the operating partner is not on that kind of explicitly equal footing with the investment partner. Jimmy,
No, it's interesting. American Industrial Partners is structured the exact same way, with a strong, well compensated operating team. Importantly, there's an explicit handoff that happens from the transaction lead, who of course stays on the board and is the primary point of contact of the CFO, to the governance lead, post-transaction, which is a senior operating partner, who has run a business before, who has had a successful exit before, who knows what it's like to work in private equity, and all of our operating partners, they're very strong on kind of the EQ and understanding the point of view of the CEO and management team. Because what's interesting about the annual survey is that you piece apart the differences, and a lot of times the groups, when you don't have the strong operating group or the strong operator, the groups can talk past one another. And an important role the operating partner can play is translator in chief between the needs of those who are protecting the capital and accountable for a return, and those who are accountable for delivering operating performance. So that translation becomes very important sometimes.
Operating partners with high EQ.
Yeah.
It seems to be a real requirement. Yeah. So let's go back to the research again. We asked private equity execs about the biggest challenges that they face because of longer hold times. I think we're all in agreement with that. 44% cited findings that sustained finding sustained growth models, but 39% cited retaining the best talent, and 33% cited building a strong leadership team, further underscoring the importance of human capital. So these are the challenges posed by longer hold times. When asked about the most important talent and leadership challenges, there was a consensus on the top two challenges: talent recruitment, development, and retention, along with the quality of the senior leadership, as well as succession planning. Mm-hmm. So given longer hold periods and the leadership challenges that our research has just cited, what are some features of the talent development playbook, if you will, that private equity needs to implement? Jimmy?
Yeah, I'll focus on talent development, and I know Joelle's kind of literally written the book on succession planning, so I'll let her comment on that side. Yeah, I mean, for me, we invest in the mid market, and oftentimes in the mid market there isn't the size and scale to develop a purposeful talent development program. There's just not enough top jobs, but one opportunity we have as kind of an aggregator of a portfolio of businesses is at an aggregated level, identifying who the kind of next generation of leaders are, however that's defined inside each company and collectively inside the firm, and bringing the force of the firm to some sort of talent development program. And as I've been surveying, I've been talking to a lot of peers about how this works in practice. I've been in my role about a year, and informally there has been a lot of work to develop talent inside AIP, with particular partners kind of taking high potentials under their wing, but not at scale. Some firms invest in, or some firms partner with MBA programs. Some firms they do it themselves. Some firms partner with kind of outside leadership development groups. And what I find is it tends to be very unique to the operating approach of that particular firm, how they go about developing talent. And the best ones do find some sort of angle that allows them to develop talent from within. And I think, we're all competing for the same candidate externally. We all kind of work with the same recruiters even. So there's kind of a parity there. The edge, the alpha, is like, can you actually develop the next generation inside, and can you bring the weight of the scale of a firm, of the firm to support that? So I think this is going to become more and more important as hold periods get longer, and the war for talent only gets fiercer. It will not go. It's only going to continue to get fiercer.
Yeah, that's very much what we're seeing, Jason. I don't know what you're seeing, but we're seeing our clients really struggling with wanting to promote from within, again, exacerbated by a number of factors, including the longer hold times. But then how do we do it? And how do we do it at scale? And how do we do it? How do we do it quickly, if you will? Joelle, very, very interested in your perspective, especially since you were one of the authors of PEI succession planning in private equity 10 years ago. In the days I can remember talking about succession planning, and my clients' eyes just glazed over. They weren't like, succession planning. What did you come into the wrong door? Like, we don't talk about this stuff. And now of course it's really key. So talk to us a little bit about, your perspective on that, even historically, coming up to the present moment.
Yeah, so I think that the industry has certainly gone through market cycles, right, over the years. And we went through a stretch of, I'll say relative ease before our current cycle. And one of the areas that the current cycle is finally bringing to light throughout private equity is the need for greater focus on people. I think there's almost a banality to that statement. It almost sounds ridiculous to even say it after the right people decades of Jack Welch and Jim Collins. Yet here we are. We still need to remember that we're really in the people business. Our best strategies and modeling won't get us there. Only through our people can we arrive at the EBITDA, the multiples, and the IRRs we're looking for. And my perspective is that building a succession plan, even if it has gaps for a bit, provides clarity. It helps to ensure the intentional approach to leadership capacity as the business grows. And I'd also like to suggest that as PE continues to shine a light on the strategic people space, that maybe we shift from thinking of people as human resources, but instead as human capital. Resources are consumed generally and used. Capital, both financial and human, is to be invested and invested in, which I think gets back to the point that Jimmy was commenting on around the criticality of the playbook and being committed to things like servant leadership and continuous learning. And for 24 years, those are really the two playbook elements that we have followed and have allowed us to accomplish the goals of the firm and our portcos, really, no matter how long the hold period is. So I think it almost transcends the time horizon of the hold.
Great point, Joelle. Just to add to that, it's interesting. We're seeing a case where with these longer hold times, a lot of these leaders are getting frustrated. And so we're seeing a lot of PE firms take a moment and sort of reinvest in their equity, their incentives, reset, because a lot of them want to retire. This was their way out 4 years ago, and they're still in the same company. And it's getting, and so that, along with focusing on maybe optimization of the business, optimizing EBITDA, and giving them incentives for that as well, because then that at least gets them incentivized to stick around. But you're right. I'm curious what you both think about this. We're seeing more PEs having to make those investments, and in a sense, progress over perfection in a way, because you may not get the perfect team, you may not get the perfect succession plan, but at least move forward and rationalize as much as you can with the team you've got, especially if they're frustrated. Are you seeing that kind of a challenge as well, and how are you addressing it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think as you described, I don't have much to comment on what you just said, but yeah, the absolutely longer hold periods are a reality. We're not immune to it, and you have to consider how that impact on the human being. So we're just as almost exactly as you described it. Those are things we look at.
Yep.
Yeah, I would just throw in there that I think to the degree that we're able to have our teams connected, not just with the end results of the business, right? Not just the economic indicators, which is obviously significant, but also understand, at a higher level, what's the purpose? Why am I here? What's the mission of this business? What are they connecting to that's purposeful beyond the economics? I'm not at all mitigating the economics. They're absolutely critical, but to the degree we're able to connect to something stronger and purposeful within the business, whether it's the product or service offering, whether it's the way it affects the marketplace, I think that allows people to have more tolerance, be more patient, and I also find that they're really connected to their teams, right? They've built these teams, they've brought these teams in, they want to see it through. So the frustrations that they're feeling go beyond just the economic implications. that they're experiencing. It also goes to, kind of the delay in seeing the rest of their team be successful. I mean, how many hundreds of millionaires have we created, have we
Yeah.
brought to life? And so there's a frustration on the leadership's part too, to not be able to get them there with the speed that they'd like to get them there.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because there was even a conference board study released today in the Wall Street Journal that talked about the power of culture for retaining talent. We've gone from 3.8 to 3.9% in the unemployment rate. There's still a war for talent, as Jimmy mentioned, earlier in the show. And people want to know that they are going to be developed. They want to know that their careers are going to be developed. They stick around because of their teams, because of their culture. Joelle, just kind of mentioning that in the conversation in the boardroom can be very, very helpful in kind of raising awareness. Sure, the equity opportunity and the wealth creation opportunity is very important, but it's not the only thing, particularly when we talk about things like Gen Z and younger millennials. We have 5 generations in the workplace. So when we talk about kind of, retaining and motivating and developing talent in light of the long hold times, we got to pull all of those levers. We really do. I'm keeping an eye on the clock here, so I want to get at least one more key question here, which is the whole question of touching on technology and AI. Both respondent groups are primarily focused on investment in AI I know this is a matter near and dear to your heart, Jason, improving operational efficiency, followed by the improvement to the top line. So what do you think the role is for technology, in particular with AI, over the next 3 to 5 years, and what should human capital leaders do to understand AI and its implications? Jimmy and Joelle, and then Jason, of course.
Sure.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, it's coming, whether we like it or not. So it's got to be dealt with, and I don't think anyone who's not, no one fully understands how AI is going to impact their discipline, because it all is going to unfold real time. Depending on the size of the firm, we're bringing in our first kind of full-time resource who's focused on AI here in this summer. I believe the individual is starting. Some firms have whole teams spun up, just depending on how like kind of core it is to the focus. In my capacity as a human capital professional, I'm understanding how it's being implemented inside the portfolio. I recently ran a talent summit, and one of our larger portfolio companies, heads of talent acquisition, talked about how they're leveraging AI in the talent in the recruitment space, using like an AI recruiting coordinator to ask very simple interview questions and schedule, so that the human beings on his team could do deeper interviews. So he's starting that, and then at a follow-on summit, he's going to present how that's going. So one, I think just our power to convene is really important, and then two, making sure as practitioners we're leveraging the tool. Like, I have a GPT-4 account. I recently had a kind of a big presentation I had to make at the firm, and I used GPT to kind of like be a thought partner for me. I had to take on personas of various industry experts. I had to take on my persona, and it made my product better. I use it very simply to build question banks for interview questions, feeding it in the job target. So these are kind of mundane areas to use it, but we have to be. I'm no longer like the young person. I'm like so I have to practice this stuff so that I stay sharp. So I don't know. That's as good an answer unfortunately as I can give you.
I love
Joelle,
it.
what do you think about AI in particular, technology in general, looking ahead?
Yeah, so I think the history of technology really shows us that when a technology approaches a barrier, a new technology is created that kind of pushes past that barrier. And AI has been around for a long time, but generative AI is certainly disrupting industries. I mean, across the globe, NP is no different. I thought that 62% of the firms that you surveyed, saying that They're encouraging their portcos to leverage Gen AI was interesting, and certainly some folks, as Jimmy said, will have a solid grasp on what it can do for various functions, and I think others will look at it with skepticism. Regardless though of how you look at it, there's no doubt it can help either transform a business or be a competitive risk or advantage. We've built a data tech and AI team here, and are really setting them loose across our portfolio companies, but also I'm embracing that and partnering with them as we look at ways to automate things within our team at the firm. And, I think this is a technology that's going to push us past our previous boundaries and ultimately is forcing another round of exponential acceleration.
Yeah. Yeah. Jason, what have you been hearing from our clients?
Yeah, fantastic points. And what I've seen in the market is interesting. In this case, PE firms are the ones who are often encouraging leaders within the portcos to go ahead and move forward. And it doesn't have to be AI. It can be crawl, walk, run. It can be initial digital solutions to get better visibility into operations, eventually getting into machine learning solutions to drive better, let's say, customer lifetime value-based segmentation of your clientele, or perhaps it's better visibility into the sales team, or very tactical, practical solutions that AI, or I should say machine learning, can provide. And then ultimately, generative AI, you're right, that's sort of still cutting edge and getting adopted slowly, but it's there, will be disruptive. And I think what I'm telling a lot of our clients is be careful, because AI has this incredible potential to enhance your insights, accelerate your insights, and even get more prescriptive at sort of the top level of maturity and help you actually find the right opportunities. But if you're not careful, you could very confidently be answering, maybe very confidently giving the right answers to the wrong questions, so to speak. And what I mean by that is AI has to be right. You got to train it very carefully. You need to have the people on your team within the PE firm, within the portco, not just to plug it in and just hope it's going to work, but you have to iterate with it. It has to grow with you. It has to mature. That's a key point. I've seen with PE firms and portcos where we've seen some failures where they didn't invest that ongoing support and training of the AI so that it becomes the tool that you want it to be. Otherwise, it can get off track pretty quickly. So absolutely agree. It is a trend that is not going away. And as we mature, I will say this huge proliferation of providers out there, lots of questions about which vendor should I use for this application. They're all shiny. They're all beautiful looking. Which ones actually tell you what I need to know, what you need to know, where the value is? I do see a consolidation in that market in the coming years and rationalization. It's almost like this .com era proliferation of providers. And so that's going to clean itself up in the coming years as well. Yeah.
And any advice, Jason, to people listening to this webinar on how to make sense of the proliferation of providers that are available?
Oh, absolutely. First, before you even consider providers, I would say have an honest assessment within the portco of the maturity of the organization in terms of digital transparency, traceability, accountability. Do you have a single source of truth? There are all kinds of ways just to get to a level of maturity that you're ready to consider potential AI solutions. Don't let the technology side of the business drive the business side, which is don't let the CIO get too enamored with any particular tool before you're actually confident on the strategy and where you are as a company. Then you pick very wisely and judiciously specific AI solutions. And of course, you can do a bake-off, you can do RFPs, et cetera. There are a lot of good ones out there, but you got to really be clear on what you're solving for first. We have seen people invest sort of, I would say, not as judiciously as they should, and they've gone down the wrong path in some ways. And they're just not ready for AI. The data just aren't there, maturity isn't there, and then they're disappointed in the results. So that'd be my key, very tactical advice immediately before you do anything. Get to that level of visibility first.
I like your mantra, crawl, walk, run, when it comes to machine learning and AI.
Yeah.
Great. Well, panel, our time has flown by. Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody for this great discussion on our results and beyond. We want to keep the conversation going, so please reach out with any additional thoughts or questions. But to our panelists and to my partner, Jason, and to everybody out there, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Ted.
Thanks.
Jason.
Bye.